I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land. It seemed impossible. No nation in history had ever risen from the ashes before. But it was written and it came true. A people scattered like dust across the earth, persecuted and exiled for more than 2,000 years, finally returned to their promised land. Israel was reborn, and in doing so, it fulfilled a prophecy that had lain dormant for centuries. The vision of the Valley of Dry Bones. But pay attention, the vision isn't finished yet. 2 of the 3 stages have already taken place: the physical return and the political revival. However, the final stage of the prophecy has not yet occurred, and when it does, it will shake the entire world. Because Israel is not just another country, it is God's prophetic clock. And each event, each threat, each war brings us one step closer to the final countdown. Stay until the end, because Israel's destiny is written in the vision of the Valley of Dry Bones, from beginning to end, and it is closer than you might imagine. To understand the mystery of the Valley of Dry Bones, we must go back more than 2,500 years to a time when Israel was no longer a free nation. It had been conquered, divided, and exiled. The 10 northern tribes had already been destroyed by Assyria more than a century earlier, and now only Judah remained, weak, divided, and under threat. It was the era of Israel's final kings, weak rulers like Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, and Zedekiah, who reigned amidst corruption, idolatry, and the looming presence of hostile empires. The temple still stood, yet it was no longer sacred. It had been defiled by idols. Justice had been replaced by greed. Then in the year 597 BC, just as the prophet Jeremiah had warned, judgment arrived. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, invaded Jerusalem for the second time. This time, he did not destroy the city, but he did take thousands into exile, including nobles, craftsmen, soldiers, and a young priest named Ezekiel, who was only 25. Ezekiel came from a priestly family. According to the law of Moses, he was meant to begin his priestly ministry at age 30. But his calling would never arrive in the way he expected. Exile took him first. He was taken to Tel Aviv, a settlement of deported Israelites on the banks of the Kabar River, a canal in Babylon. There, a marginalized Jewish community lived, far from the temple and seemingly even further from God. For 5 long years, Ezekiel lived among the exiles, silently watching as his people repeated the same errors. Even in this foreign land, some still wondered whether God had abandoned them completely. A few clung to the hope that their punishment was temporary, that Jerusalem would endure and one day they would return. But others lost hope entirely, surrendering to Babylonian culture. Israel had not merely lost a battle, it had lost its purpose. It had broken the covenant, and worst of all, it had lost its faith. Ezekiel stood caught between 2 worlds, one of promise and one of judgment. He had prepared his whole life to serve God, yet now faced only devastation. It was precisely when Ezekiel turned 30, the exact age when he would have begun his priestly service, that God finally spoke. Suddenly, the heavens opened and a storm appeared. Lightning flashed. A dense, blazing cloud filled the sky, and within it were the cherubim of God. 4 living creatures, each with 4 faces: human, lion, ox, and eagle. Their wings spread wide, their feet gleamed like burnished bronze, and beside them were wheels. Wheels within wheels, covered with eyes, moving in all directions without turning. It was a vision unlike anything Ezekiel had ever seen. He realized what he was witnessing: the glory of God departing from the temple, abandoning Jerusalem. And there, in a foreign land, amidst exile, God said to him, "Son of man, stand on your feet and I will speak to you." Ezekiel fell to the ground, overwhelmed with fear, but then God handed him a scroll. "Eat this scroll," he said, "and then speak to the house of Israel." The scroll was covered, front and back, with words of sorrow and lamentation. Ezekiel ate it, and though it contained judgment, it tasted as sweet as honey in his mouth. From that moment on, Ezekiel became a prophet. God made him a watchman, a sentinel in the ruins, charged with warning, crying out, acting, even though no one wanted to listen. And the most difficult part? God told him plainly, the people would not listen. Their hearts were hardened. So Ezekiel would have to speak not just with words, but with his very body. Thus began the most symbolic and unusual mission in all of prophecy. Ezekiel was commanded to perform prophetic actions, dramas of judgment enacted before the people. He had to lie on his side for 390 days, each day representing a year of Israel's sin, then 40 more days for Judah. He was to eat measured bread, baked over dung, as a sign of the famine soon to fall upon Jerusalem. He shaved his head with a sword and divided the hair into 3 parts, one to be burnt, one to be struck with the sword, and one scattered to the wind. A vivid image of how Jerusalem's people would perish by fire, by war, and by exile. But then came the most personal blow. God said to him, "The delight of your eyes will die, and you shall not mourn." So it happened, Ezekiel's wife died, but he was forbidden to grieve. For this too was a sign. The fall of Jerusalem would be so sudden, so devastating, there would be no time to mourn. Ezekiel lost everything: his home, his temple, even his beloved wife. But in exchange, God granted him a revelation, the fate of Israel unveiled in the vision of the Valley of Dry Bones. Ezekiel had seen impossible things before, but nothing prepared him for what came next. A prophetic roadmap revealing the destiny of Israel, its destruction, its rebirth, and finally, its restoration in the last days. It all began when the hand of the Lord came upon Ezekiel. In the spirit, he was carried away to a desolate place, a vast, silent valley, dry, lifeless. But the most chilling part wasn't the emptiness. It was what covered the ground. Bones. Countless dry bones scattered across the parched earth, fractured, bleached by the sun, forgotten and abandoned long ago. Ezekiel was led to walk among them, hearing the brittle crunch beneath his feet. He understood the meaning instantly. The bones were Israel, destroyed, exiled, landless, a people reduced to dust. And then in that eerie silence, God posed a troubling question. "Son of man, can these bones live again?" Ezekiel looked around. Everything was dead. Logic said no, but faith whispered yes. So he replied humbly, "Lord, only you know." Then God did something astonishing. He gave Ezekiel a command. "Preach to the bones. Prophesy to these bones and say to them, 'Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord." It sounded absurd. Who speaks to bones? But Ezekiel obeyed. He stood in that valley of death and began to speak. Suddenly the ground shook. A faint tremor at first, like something rumbling deep beneath the soil. Then the sound grew into a deafening roar. Bones began to move. One by one they reconnected. Vertebrae linked with spines. Ribs aligned. Skulls found their rightful places. Every bone fit perfectly, like a puzzle being solved by unseen hands. Next came tendons and flesh. Muscles formed. Skin wrapped around the bodies. Before Ezekiel stood an army, not yet alive, but whole in form. Bodies complete but lifeless. They bore the shape of humans but remained corpses. Then God spoke again. This time, Ezekiel wasn't told to speak to the bodies, but to the breath itself. "Prophesy to the breath, Son of man, say to the breath, 'Thus says the Lord God, come from the 4 winds, O breath, and breathe into these slain, that they may live.'" Ezekiel obeyed once more. And then it happened. The breath came. It wasn't ordinary wind, it was Ruah, the breath of God, the same breath that had once brought life to Adam, the same breath that hovered over the waters in creation. And as it entered them, the bodies breathed. Chests rose, eyes opened, life returned. Before Ezekiel stood a living army, a symbol of Israel reborn, a people once dead, now brought to life by the power of God. This vision was not left open to interpretation. God explained its meaning clear. "Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. They say, 'Our bones are dried up and our hope is gone. We are cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. My people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. These verses reveal Israel's past, present, and future. First, Ezekiel is shown spiritual reality, a people in exile, but also in spiritual death. In the Bible, valleys represent judgment, hardship, and separation from God. Israel had fallen from the holy mountain of Zion into the dust of history. The dry bones symbolize more than political defeat. They represent the collective death of a nation, a people who ceased to exist on the world stage, their voice silenced, their faith scattered. God said they were buried among the nations, the very places where they had been exiled. He called them graves. For over 2,000 years, Israel became a wandering people. They faced inquisitions, expulsions, and eventually the Holocaust. Yet still they remembered the promise. Each Passover, exiled Jews would repeat a phrase, "Next year in Jerusalem." Though it seemed impossible, the prophecy was written long ago, and then it began to come true. What seemed impossible was now unfolding. The people who had been scattered like dust were returning. The land once desolate was blooming, and the name long forgotten was proclaimed once more among the nations. Israel. That day finally arrived on 14th May, 1948. After the horrors of the Holocaust, David Ben-Gurion stood in Tel Aviv and declared something that many believed would never happen. The state of Israel is born. The nation of Israel, absent from the map for 2,000 years, sprang back to life. This event had no precedent in human history. For the first time in millennia, the Jewish people returned to their ancestral home and re-established a sovereign state. The dry bones began to reconnect. From every corner of the world, they came home. Within just a few years, millions of Jewish people returned from over 100 countries. From the United States, Ethiopia, Russia, Argentina, Germany. They spoke different languages. Many had never set foot in Jerusalem, yet they returned. The bones were joining again. Many theologians, scholars, and believers regard this event as the literal beginning of the fulfillment of Ezekiel 37. And since that time, Israel has been attacked repeatedly, surrounded by enemies and threatened in every generation. Yet still, it stands. And not only survives, it thrives. In 1948, it was largely desert. Today, it exports technology, water, fruit, intelligence, and security. The Hebrew language, once dormant, is now spoken by millions, the same language used by the prophets to write God's word. This isn't just about a language. It is a living testimony that what was dead can live again. As the prophet Isaiah declared, "The wilderness will blossom like the lily." But let us remember, Ezekiel foresaw 3 stages in this vision: the gathering of the bones, the rebuilding of the body, the entering of the spirit. Israel has already fulfilled the first 2 stages. First came the physical return, the bones gathering, the people returning to the land. Then came the political reconstruction, the body forming, the nation reestablished. But the third stage, the breath of God, has not yet come. Israel has not yet experienced a spiritual awakening. Most of the nation still does not recognize the Messiah. Some live with faith, many live without it. But the great promise foretold long ago, an outpouring of the Spirit, a collective transformation of the heart, has yet to happen. At the first Pentecost, the Holy Spirit descended upon a small group of disciples in Jerusalem. It changed history. But Ezekiel and the prophets spoke of another Pentecost, one not limited to a few, but extending to the entire nation. When that day arrives, it will be like fire, spreading across Israel, spreading across the world. It will be the Ruach, the breath of God, reviving dry bones. And remember, Ezekiel didn't just speak of any wind. He used the word Ruach, God's divine breath. The same breath that animated Adam, the same breath that will one day bring a nation back to spiritual life. That breath has not yet come. Today, Israel is restored politically. The valley is no longer empty. The people are back in the land. But the breath of God has not yet entered them. So the question remains, when will Israel breathe again? When will the divine breath come upon them and complete the vision? To find that answer, we must look beyond Ezekiel. He was not alone in foreseeing this. Other prophets spoke of it too. Jeremiah, with bold prophetic clarity, declared, "I will put my law within them and write it upon their hearts. I will be their God, and they shall be my people." Joel announced a radical promise. "I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy. Your elders shall dream dreams." Zechariah, perhaps the most vivid of all, spoke of a future day. "I will pour out upon the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look upon me whom they have pierced." Centuries later, the Apostle Paul would devote 3 entire chapters in his letter to the Romans, explaining this very mystery. He wrote, "Partial blindness has come upon Israel until the full number of the Gentiles has come in, and then all Israel will be saved." Here lies the key. Today, Israel has returned. The bones have joined, the flesh has formed, but the breath, the Ruach, has not descended. That will be the final miracle. And it will not be symbolic. It will be very real. A national awakening that will change history and usher in the final stage of the prophetic plan. In this coming spiritual awakening, God will not only restore Israel's heart, but he will also set apart a remnant for a holy mission. The book of Revelation, chapter 7, reveals a vital detail concerning the end times. God will choose 144,000 servants from among the 12 tribes of Israel, marking them with his seal to carry out a prophetic mission during the time of judgment. We read, "And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed from all the tribes of the sons of Israel." This is not merely a symbolic number. Revelation specifically names 12,000 people from each tribe, a faithful, consecrated remnant. They are chosen by God to shine light during the world's darkest hour. These sealed ones will be real Israelites. They will be messengers of truth when the world is drowning in lies. As trumpets sound, as seals are broken, and as the earth trembles with the final judgments, these 144,000 will proclaim Jesus as the true Messiah, not just to Israel, but to all nations. This is the ultimate confirmation that God has not forgotten his people. He will use them as instruments of global salvation. Because Israel's purpose is not fulfilled simply by returning to their land. It is fulfilled when they return to God and become once again what they were always called to be, a light to the nations. Jesus said it plainly, "Learn the lesson from the fig tree. When its branches grow tender and its leaves sprout, you know that summer is near." Israel is that fig tree. The prophetic clock began ticking the moment its leaves sprouted in 1948. But there is more. Israel hasn't only returned to its land. It has become, once more, the epicenter of global attention. Every war, every tension, every negotiation involving Jerusalem is watched by the world, because what happens in Israel affects the entire globe. And even that was foretold. "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup that causes trembling among all the surrounding peoples." Ezekiel's vision is still unfolding today. The nation has returned. The valley is no longer empty. But the Spirit of God has yet to dwell fully within his people. The Valley of Dry Bones is a prophetic roadmap, a timeline for Israel's restoration. However, that vision does not end with rebirth. Immediately after, Ezekiel received another revelation. This time, not about restoration, but about war. A prophetic war. Right after Israel is reborn as a nation, the prophet sees a terrifying vision directly linked to the end of days. Not ancient Israel, but a restored Israel, one that dwells securely in its own land without walls or fortresses. Ezekiel even lists the nations in this alliance, and these names are not symbolic. They are ancient names for real nations today. Persia, modern-day Iran; Cush, modern-day Sudan; Put, modern-day Libya; Gumamir and Togarmah, regions in modern-day Turkey. These nations will converge from the north, south, and east, with Jerusalem as their target. Yet Ezekiel does not describe this as a mere invasion. he calls it a divine appointment. For God himself declares, "I will put hooks into your jaws and bring you up against my land, so that the nations may know me." In other words, God will allow this attack, not as a military strategy, but as a moment of divine judgment. Ezekiel describes what will follow. A powerful earthquake, mountains will crumble, soldiers will turn against each other, fire and brimstone will fall from the heavens. But Israel will not defend itself. God himself will act. Thus I will magnify and sanctify myself, and the nations will know that I am the Lord. Ezekiel was not the only prophet to see this war. Centuries later, Zechariah described it as well, from a different perspective. He wrote, "The nations will gather together to attack Jerusalem. The city will be divided, homes will be plundered. But at that very moment, the Lord himself will descend and fight just as he did in ancient days." He continues, "On that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives." Who was Zechariah referring to? The Messiah, the one who was rejected, pierced, and crucified, but who now returns as king. Even in Revelation 20, written by the Apostle John more than 600 years after Ezekiel, the enemy returns with the same name, Gog and Magog. The nations will rebel once more, surround the camp of the saints, and attempt to destroy God's people again. But there will be no battle. God's fire will fall, judgment will come, and the enemy will be defeated permanently. God's plan does not change. Israel remains at the center of it all. Because Israel is not simply a place, it is the stage where God's great plan began and where it will reach its ultimate climax. Her scattering was foretold, her return was foretold, even her spiritual blindness and eventual awakening were foretold, centuries in advance. And in the final battle, when every nation rises against Jerusalem, God himself will answer, in power. Israel is God's prophetic clock. It was there that the Messiah was rejected. There he was raised up on the cross, and it is there that he will return as king. Every event, every threat, every war marks another step toward fulfilling what is written. The book of Revelation confirms it. Jerusalem will be the target, but it will also become the place of final redemption. Paul, Peter, John, Ezekiel, Zechariah, they all agree the Messiah will return there. And when God's people came back to their land, and when Jerusalem once again became their capital, the prophetic calendar was set in motion. That is why, as nations align against Israel, the echoes of the end grow louder and clearer, because everything written is coming to pass, and the place where history began will be the very same place where eternity begins. Gisu said it plainly. When you see these things beginning to take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Today, many prophecies once thought impossible are unfolding before our eyes. The return of the Jewish people to their homeland, the revival of Hebrew as a national language, the spiritual restoration of Jerusalem, the forming of enemy alliances against Israel. Do you really believe all of this is coincidence? It is not. The Bible is not just an old book. It is a map, a clock, a warning, and a promise. Every fulfilled prophecy is another tick in the final countdown. But the story is not over yet. We still await the most important event, the breath of the Spirit. And when it comes, it will spread like fire, not just across Israel, but across the entire earth. It will mark the beginning of the end, or perhaps the start of something new. Now, after everything you've heard, and after seeing how an ancient vision has been fulfilled, word for word, the question is now for you. Do you believe we are watching the final pages of God's plan unfold? Which side of history will you choose to stand on? If this message has spoken to your heart, please consider liking this video, subscribing to Secrets of the Holy Word, and leaving your thoughts in the comments section below. Your engagement helps share these truths with others across the world. And if you haven't yet seen it, you need to watch our video that answers a question few dare to ask. Is Israel still God's chosen people? Watch it now to understand who the people of Israel truly are today, and whether they still remain the chosen. God bless you.